I'd just arrived in Shanghai from Hong Kong, slightly tired, and fortunately for me, still rocking the accidental Stalin moustache I'd somehow grown before the trip started. Not the ideal facial hair of choice when visiting the mainland, but I didn't have time to shave, so I embraced it and hoped for the best. I mean, I'm sure Mao Zedong would have appreciated the Stalin moustache anyway. I only had one evening in the city, so I headed straight to the river. I believe it was called the Bund. And that's when Shanghai delivered one of the wildest visual contrasts I'd ever seen. On my side of the river were the old revolutionary monuments, heroic workers, bold soldiers, and that classic style of statues that make you stand up a little bit straighter, even when you're just passing by. I was the only city boy interested in the statues.
You can be in the heart of China, in the financial district, just turn a corner, you can be in the former USSR anywhere you go. Even this building here looks like it could be in Moscow.
Somewhere nearby, a very large statue of Chairman Mao keeps watch over the city. His presence is impossible to miss. Let's just say he was a man who left quite a significant impact on China's history, a very significant impact. The kind people still discuss carefully, even decades later. And across the river, the complete opposite. Pudong, a skyline that looks like capitalism strapped itself into a rocket and never looked back. Neon skyscrapers, glowing banks, luxury hotels, giant screens advertising things I definitely couldn't afford. It's like the future and a shopping centre had a baby and then they fed it steroids and caffeine. So I was there, moustache, backpack, camera, standing between two different stories of China. Behind me, the monuments built to honour the ideals of equality and shared struggle. Across the river, buildings celebrating ambition, wealth, and enough LED lights to power a small planet. Couldn't help but laugh. The monuments behind me were carved from stone, serious and timeless, a reminder of an era with strong beliefs, dramatic campaigns, and, well, let's just say some very complicated chapters in Chinese history. Chapters that I will not be describing in detail, because I quite like being allowed back into China next year. So last year I decided to dip my toes into China for the very first time. Not a proper trip, oh no, just a tester. A little, let's see if the Great Firewall eats me alive kind of visit. I went for the transit visa, which at the time was shorter than it is now, but still perfectly enough for my little 2-day mission. I thought, I'll breeze in, breeze out, no drama. Naturally, there was drama. I took a ferry from Macau to Shenzhen, imagining I'd glide through immigration like a seasoned globetrotter. I had my own onward ferry booked towards Hong Kong 2 days later. Clean, simple, elegant plan. Except it turns out that plan was completely illegal. Apparently, because I could have gone directly from Macau to Hong Kong, China considered my carefully crafted transit plan not a transit at all. Basically, why are you here? Why didn't you just go straight to Hong Kong directly? Good question, wish I'd asked myself that earlier. I'm pulled aside, not a gentle aside either, one of those, sir, come with me situations, where you suddenly feel like you definitely did do something wrong, even if you didn't. For 2 hours I'm interrogated about where I've been, what I've been doing, why I'm travelling so fast, why I've got stamps from Hong Kong, Macau, Japan, Taiwan. Basically a list of places that, when combined, apparently form the world tour of political sensitivity. At one point I was accused of being a spy. Me, a spy? Somehow travelling between Asian cities at budget airline speed made me look like Jason Bourne. If Jason Bourne had a £20 backpack and an accidental Stalin moustache. Then they accused me of not being the person in my own passport, which is tricky to respond to without sounding guilty. I promise I'm me. They just stared at me. Eventually I was put inside this, let's call it a holding area, but honestly it was a metal box. 7-foot high steel walls, open top, and an immigration officer standing on a platform above me like some kind of bureaucratic zookeeper. I stayed calm, I thought this'll be fine. Someone will realise I'm just an idiot tourist. Finally, they decide that I'm not, in fact, a spy, a saboteur, or someone impersonating myself. Instead, they let me buy a 5-day Shenzhen visa for £15, which is honestly a bargain considering the 2-hour interrogation and temporary imprisonment I'd just enjoyed. And then China won its second battle with me, paying for anything. My cards didn't work, cash barely worked, ATMs didn't work, and I couldn't get a SIM card. And as predicted, I couldn't get any Wi-Fi without turning on roaming charges to receive the login code that they send via text. It was like the universe was screaming, "Mate, you're not ready for China yet." So after one night of wandering around like a lost NPC, I admitted defeat, marched straight back to the ferry terminal, and returned to Hong Kong, tail between my legs, ego bruised. But honestly, it was a perfect dress rehearsal for my proper trip this year. Now I'm older, wiser, and marginally better at not getting detained. Back to my Shanghai trip story. Meanwhile, across the water, the skyscrapers were flashing like they're auditioning for a music video. It's the kind of contrast you don't really need to point out. And that's the thing about Shanghai. It doesn't hide the contradiction, it puts it proudly on display. Old ideals on one side, and the new reality on the other. And the river flowing calmly between them like a referee who's seen it all and isn't getting involved. I watched tourist boats drift by. I watched locals sipping iced tea under Mao's outstretched arms, and I realised that somehow all of this works. The past is here, the future is there. Shanghai stands confidently between them, completely unfazed. I was starting to think I was starting to crack China a little bit. So the night actually started pretty wholesome. I went into the park for a beer and I was approached by some local lads, and just like that, I had been adopted. We talked for hours using Google Translate, which was functioning as my entire diplomatic service. And I also want to shout out to the guy who sold me the SIM card at Shanghai airport and also installed a VPN for me. Without the VPN, I would have been screwed. So I was talking to the guys who even tried teaching me Chinese. I nodded and smiled like a model student, and I retained absolutely nothing from their teachings. Not a single word. I left speaking worse Chinese than when I arrived. After that international summit, I somehow found myself in a German restaurant called German Restaurant, drinking German beer in a bar on Nanjing Road. Because apparently my brain thinks Bavaria is part of China. Cut to 5 AM, and suddenly I'm wandering Shanghai trying to find a taxi to the airport. At this point, I've been flying every single day, changing cities like socks, and it began to dawn on me, maybe this whole fly every day plan was not medically advisable. My body was starting to unionise. I finally found a taxi, pointed at my phone like a man defusing a bomb, and off we went, straight to the wrong airport. I do believe that taxi driver had something to do with that wrong airport. Google Maps snitched on the situation 20 minutes later. I waved at the driver frantically and he agreed to take me to the correct airport so I could catch my flight, but for a price. He turned around at the speed of someone reversing out of the supermarket car park space and took me to the correct airport so I could get my flight to Chengdu. And then came the bill. He charged me 5 times what it should have been. At 5 AM, hungover, barely able to stand. I paid it without a fight. I didn't even flinch. That's how you know a man is spiritually defeated. By the time I reached the correct airport, I was hollow as shell, travels on me questioning every choice that led me here. And for breakfast, I ordered spaghetti bolognese and a beer at 7 AM. They gave me chopsticks. So there I was, in the airport food court, slurping spag bowl with chopsticks, drinking beer, and wondering at which point my life turned into a deleted scene from The Hangover Eastern Edition, all while preparing myself for my flight to Chengdu. Flying every day, maybe not the smartest plan, but honestly, what a night. My evening was short, but unforgettable. A strange blend of history, neon, and my unfortunate moustache.